Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast, sponsored by Saily. You know what to do by now. Hit the link in the podcast description box for a discounted offer on your eSIM. You can stay connected abroad at an affordable price, a secure app which keeps you connected to your mobile data. Like I say, hit the link in the podcast description box. 200 destinations to sign up from. It is really worth your time and it'll save on your mobile data that you use here in the United Kingdom. I'm Andrew Musgrove, joined by John Gibson. And in today's episode, we're going to pay tribute to one of the finest number nines Newcastle United have ever had, Wyn Davies, who sadly passed away earlier this month, aged 83. John wrote a wonderful piece for our website and newspaper paying tribute to Wyn. He knew him rather well, so it felt appropriate to bring John back onto the podcast to pay tribute to Wyn. John, when you heard the news, what was your initial thoughts and feelings?
Great sadness. A little bit expecting it. He had physically gone downhill and had a few things that were wrong with him towards the end, and he wasn't able to travel up here for a lot of first club reunions, which happen quite regularly. So not totally out of the blue, but huge sadness because as I've said many times in the past, in my mind, I tend to think of footballers as invincible. You know, I always see them as the 29-year-old strutting centre forward and never think of them as a old age pensioner like myself. And so it was absolute sadness because without question he's a number 9 legend at Newcastle United. Absolutely no question about that. Sure, he isn't in the same category on one half of the coin as were Jackie, Supermac and Shearer, because he scored too few goals. He scored only 53 in 216 appearances for Newcastle, which is not a good ratio for centre forward. But believe you me, he had as many assists as he had goals, because he terrified defenders and left the door open for very shrewd and clinical finishers like Pop Robson to cash in on what he'd done. And I have never in my life seen a braver centre forward than Wyn Davies, and I include all the madmen like Billy Whitehurst and the bravery that we had of Alan Shearer. But this guy he was a kamikaze pilot. He flew higher in the kite in a strong wind. His feet were average. His head was brilliant. Hence his nickname, Wyn the Leap, because he was around at the time when Lynn Davies was winning gold medals at the long jump, and so he was Ling the Leap, and our man was Wyn the Leap, and he was incredible in terms of the battering he took, especially in Europe. I mean, he got stitches virtually every game. He fractured a cheekbone. He broke his nose. He had severely gashed legs. I mean, when we won the cup in 1969, he played in the second leg against Ujpest Doza in Budapest with a smashed cheekbone from the first leg. And at the end of the game, when everybody was celebrating, etc., the doc told Big Wyn, you can only have one lager to celebrate winning a European trophy. And then he was carted off. Once the plane landed in Newcastle, he was carted off to hospital, clutching his medal in his hand because his cheekbone had given away. He was a phenomenal man of immense bravery. And I could say without a shadow of doubt, Andrew, that Newcastle wouldn't have won the first cup without him. We may well think with the passing of time, and certainly people that didn't see Newcastle at the time, you'd remember from the history books of Bob Moncur scored a hat-trick over the 2-leg final. You would remember from the history books of Pop Robson scored thunderous goals, etc., and perhaps think that the Newcastle's first cup team was all about those two. It was about those two, but it was about Wyn Davies. And without Wyn Davies, Newcastle would never have won the first cup. And one of the reasons why, I always remember when we played one of the games abroad, one of the international defenders that we played against, I think it was an Italian over the 3 years we were in Europe, said to me after the game, he said, this, he said, this game, he says, it's called football, isn't it? Not bloody head ball. And that was the difference, because everything was played up high to Wyn, and the continental defenders, used with tricky centre forwards on the floor, were just unable to handle his bombardment, unable to handle him at all. And his greatest moments for us were in Europe rather than in the old First Division.
Yeah, plenty to talk about because, as you say, John, so instrumental in that Fairs Cup win of 1969. But before we get onto that, I want to talk about his journey to Newcastle United. He joined them
Yes.
from Bolton Wanderers, and it was because he impressed Joe Harvey so much that Joe wanted to bring him to Newcastle United.
Yeah, what happened when we were winning the second division championship to come up into the top division, we played Bolton at home, almost a winner takes all match, because Bolton were going strong at the time. And Big Wyn was centre forward for Bolton, and he absolutely tortured us. He hit the woodwork twice in the first 20 minutes with towering headers. He was causing mayhem, and our supporters were, every time the ball went near him, because things were happening. And Joe Harvey, an old-fashioned type of manager, if ever there was one, sent a message out to John McGrath, who was our centre-half playing against Big Wyn, very early on after his second header crashed against the bar, and he sent a message out via the full-back to say, let's see how fast he is when he's limping. In other words, you better get stuck into him, as we are going to lose. And sure enough, Big McGrath almost decapitated Wyn, who always come back from things like that. But when you limp, you're not as fast as when you're in full flow. And sure enough, we won the game. But that never left. That impression never left Joe Harvey. And when we were in the first division and we were looking to expand, he went back to the thought that we must sign Wyn Davies.
What do you think impressed him so much? Was it his presence in the air, I think?
Joe Harvey was effectively, while he was a right half, is what they called him in those days, he was effectively a double centre half with Frank Brennan. And he knew what it was like to mark guys, and he was a great admirer of toughness. He thought bravery was a very important part of football. And in truth it is, because if you're not brave, whether you're a midfielder or whether you're a centre forward or a centre half, if you're not brave, you don't get much. And he was a great believer in bravery, and he saw the bravery of Davies, and he saw the ability as well. The ability wasn't so much on the floor. He wasn't hopeless on the floor, but he was very average on the floor. But upstairs, and he had this incredible knack of when he jumped, he hung in the air for a split second longer than anyone else. So on his way up, he hung. Another guy was on his way up, but immediately on his way down, and he hung that split second and got his header in. And Joe decided this must be our centre forward when we play the top teams, and we were going into Europe. And the interesting thing, and Joe told me the tale afterwards, when he went to sign him at Bolton, he was locked in a room with Wyn. There wasn't agents in those days, and he did the deal with Wyn, the financial deal with Wyn to come to Newcastle. And by the way, we got him for 50 quid a week. I know there's a difference in the value of money today, but can you believe that Isaac could be on 50 quid a week looking for what he's looking for in his possible transfer? He was on 50 quid a week. And by the way, a lot of Newcastle players envied him because he was on the big time. But after he did the deal with Joe, and Joe was down with a couple of the directors, Wyn said to Joe, is it all right before I sign if I speak to my mother? And Joe said, yes, of course you can. So he phoned his mother, who was standing in a coin box at the end of their street in Carnarvon, because he wasn't on the phone. His mum wasn't on the phone, so she was waiting, planted in this coin box at the end of the street. He phoned the coin box. She picked up the phone, and he proceeded to talk to his mother about whether he should sign in the deal he'd done. Only point is, he was talking to her in Welsh. And Joe Harvey said to me afterwards, I was thinking, what the hell's he talking about? I thought I was signing a foreign centre forward, because all this was going on, and he could have been slagging Joe off for Newcastle United or for anything. Joe wouldn't have known. And he spoke to his mum in Welsh, and he was always very close to his mum. Spoke to his mum in Welsh, come off, and signed for Newcastle United.
Well, there we have it, and what a signing it was. And he took that number 9 shirt on, John. We had Ron McGarry was a couple of seasons before him, Willie Penman, Dave Hilly as well for a season, and then it was Wyn's for the entirety that he was here. You mentioned his goal scoring record, 53 in 216, and that doesn't kind of shout out as a record that you would expect of a Newcastle United number 9. I'm just wondering if you can take us back to that period of time, and what was the kind of viewpoint of Wyn from the terraces? Because I think if you look at those numbers, like if that was happening today with a number 9, you'll go, there's no way that number 9 would last 4 years, I don't think.
Correct.
Was it a case that they could see the value aside from goals, which sounds a daft sentence to say when we're talking about number 9, but was that what they could see?
Oh, without a shadow of doubt. I mean, he must have without having the facts and figures in front of me, Andrew, he must have one of the poorest goals per game record of a number 9 legend, because the number 9 legends are normally Hughie Gallagher and Jackie Milburn, Super Mac and Alan Shearer, who scored piles of goals. And this fella didn't. And he was an out-and-out number 9. But he terrified defenders. He was as brave. You know what it is? If you fight the cause at Newcastle, fans love you. And if there's a plus side of it, bear in mind he was centre forward when Newcastle won the one and only European trophy in their history. So, that's a significant point. But Pop Robson was a wonderful goal scorer in his own right, and a super player and a super man. But by Jove, he benefited by having Wyn Davies next to him. I mean, there used to be 3 people mark Wyn Davies on a corner. I mean, on a corner, 3 people would try to hem him in, and still he would get the ball above them and knock it down. I mean, often you would get an in-swinging corner, Andrew. He would stand on the goal line in the way that Jack Charlton did, stand on the goal line in front of the keeper, and when the ball come in, instead of just flipping his head and knocking it into the net, he would knock it down to a colleague, somebody like Pop Robson, to finish. And he was very, very unselfish in the goal-scoring situation, but he was brave as a lion. I mean, if you put him on his backside, he just smiled, got back up, and come back at you. He never knew when he was beaten, and therefore he was never beaten. And he carried himself so well. He looked like a warrior. On the pitch, his chest was sticking out. He was 6 foot high. He had a slim build. He was ramrod straight, his back. He had flame red hair, and he strutted. He looked like, I'm a warrior. You admire me, because I'm, when people would look up in awe at Mount Everest, they looked up in awe at Wyn Davies, and he had that about him, and he was loved by the fans. Big Wyn was loved by the fans. And the only other centre forward I can recollect very easily that was his style was Vic Keeble, who played in the 1955 FA Cup winning side alongside Jackie Milburn, who was all about heading and poor on the ground. But Vic, with respect to a lovely man, wasn't of the quality that Big Wyn was. And I remember Lord Westwood saying to me in Budapest, after we won the first cup, he said we were standing looking at that trophy, and it had champagne in it, and we were drinking out of the trophy, and Lord Bill said to me, we would never have won this without him, and pointed at Big Wyn in the corner. And I mean, that is absolutely true. He was the difference, because he was quite unique in those days. It's on the continent, not in English football so much, but on the continent. They weren't used to centre forwards who predominantly played the game in the air, and they couldn't handle him at all.
You talk about his bravery. Was he tough though as well? I mean, in terms of kind of standing up for himself, because I know his personality-wise, John, he was quite shy. He didn't quite understand why he was loved so much, even all these years later. He was someone who kind of just got on with life and didn't chase the fame and fortune sort of thing. And you would look at him, even the pictures of him in his black and white shirt, and you think he doesn't look like someone who was tough and scary. I guess there is a fine line between brave and being that tough and scary player. For those who didn't have the privilege to watch him, could you just answer that question?
Yes, yes. He wasn't scary in the way Billy Whitehurst was scary. Billy Whitehurst was scary because you thought you might be visiting the cemetery the next day. I mean, he terrified the life out of you. But this guy was scary in as much as you could have taken a bond off its hinges and tried to slap him with it. He would have fell down, but he would have got back up and come straight back at you. He had immense bravery in that way, bravery that brought respect. It was an essential part of his game, because if you're all about heading, you've got to be brave, Andrew, because heading's the definition of putting your head in the lion's mouth, because you're going to get kicked and you're going to get punched and you're going to get whatever. I mean, I remember the season after we won the first cup, he started a riot. He didn't start it. It was the stupid Italians, but against Inter Milan at St James's, when he got back up and feigned that he was going to have a pop at the goalkeeper, and the goalkeeper went absolutely crackers and stuck the nut on him and then swung a punch at the referee. Can you imagine that? Swinging a punch at the referee when you're an international centre forward for Inter Milan, and was inevitably sent off, etc., etc. People couldn't understand him. And yes, as you say, he was a peculiar sort of hero, if you like, because he was very much a loner. When he was playing for Newcastle, he was very much a loner. I mean, people that didn't know him would say he was aloof, but really it was shyness came into it. He was also like a country boy, that was suddenly thrust into the big city and the big city life and handling fame and doing this, that, and the other, and it just wasn't about him at all. I mean, he was like a country boy. I remember when I used to be on the coach in the very early days, it's in the Newcastle United coach, before I got banned for telling the truth. When I was on the coach, we used to pull into Chesley Street Market to pick up Big Wyn, who roomed with Tommy Gibb, that played for Newcastle in the first cup. He roomed with a landlady there. And he would be there on a Friday, which was market day at Chester Street, and he was buying bruised fruit from the market, because you got it for a couple of quid cheaper. And he always knew how to look after his pennies, did Big Wyn. And he would come on the coach with a brown paper parcel with bruised fruit in it. Not fruit, bruised fruit, because he got it cheaper because it was bruised. And I mean, he was a bachelor all his life. He was, he looked an absolute warrior. He was a good-looking guy. Plenty of girls thought he was wonderful, and because he's Newcastle's number 9 as well. And he liked the girls, and he had girlfriends, etc., etc. But he never married all his life. And, towards the end of his life, when I used to go and visit him in Bolton, his great companion was his dog. He had a dog, and he absolutely loved his dog, and had a great warmth taking the dog out for walks, etc., etc. I mean, we say he didn't sort of court the big time. I mean, after he finished playing, he went back to Bolton, which is where he lived when Newcastle signed him, his first really big club. And he became a baker. And he was a baker working in Bolton until he retired. And it's funny, because he had that, was it aloofness, was it shyness, but he was certainly a loner. When he was playing for Newcastle United, he never got close to the press. Bob Moncur handled the press brilliantly in the way that Keegan did later. Bob Robson was beloved by the press. Sinclair and Scott, the two Scottish wingers, very much like McNamee, was a cult figure. But he was never close to the press and never did many interviews, etc., etc. And so there was a distance, if you like, between him and I. And I was friends, and to this day are still friends with so many of the first cup winning side. But yet I got close to Wyn later in life. And for the last 20 years of his life, I was very, very close to Wyn, got on great with him, saw him many times when he'd come up here for reunions. We went over to Bolton a few times, the first club, which are the Newcastle United supporters from the 69. And I got close to him and he said, Gibbo, he said, hindsight's a wonderful thing and age is a wonderful thing because it gives you experience. I regret handling the way I handled the press and some of the things back in the days because I was just not equipped to do it. So I withdrew from it and I was just my own person. He said, but now when I've got to know people like yourself and that, I've loved that situation so much and I've enjoyed being a Newcastle hero more since I retired than when I was a hero because I've been able to relax and enjoy it and it's found a common denominator, if you like, and it's worked for him. But I mean, when you think of the ability the man had, despite a goal-scoring record, which was very average, as a number 9, after he left Newcastle, he went immediately and played for Manchester City and Manchester United. So I mean, that's not bad, is it? And he played at Man United with people like George Best and Bobby Charlton and people of that nature, and Man City with all the superstars that were there. And he was a quality man, as we all found out later in life. And he was a quality player. You half wanted him on your side, not on the side against you.
Yeah, I can imagine because, like you say, his ability in the air was rather unrivaled for that time. John, all that remains to be done then is for you to once again, in your own words, pay tribute to Wyn Davies after the sad news that he has indeed passed away.
Yeah, I think from my point of view, there's not many things where age brings any sort of blessing because age brings uh, a limited ability to do certain things that in your youth you took automatically for granted. But age has brought me the fact that I have lived long enough to have witnessed Newcastle win the European Fairs Cup. And that is still, for all we won the League Cup this year, which is wonderful, and that stopped the drought. We've only won one European Cup, and he was centre forward in that side, and he epitomised that side. He was a strutting uh, warrior, and there's no other word from him than he was a warrior. He carried the badge with pride on his chest. He was appreciated so much by the rest of the team. He wasn't really close socially to the rest of the team outside of Tommy Gibb because he wasn't a social animal by nature. But Joe Harvey adored him. Joe Harvey adored him, and Joe Harvey adored people that did that utmost for Newcastle United and was successful for Newcastle United. And Big Wyn epitomised what Joe Harvey loved in a player. It was my privilege to see him play. I still haven't seen a better header of the ball all the way through to today with all the great people we've had in the air since. He singularly is the best header of the ball I've ever seen. I've never seen anybody jump as high as he jumped. I swear that on a good day he could jump above Gray's Monument. He was that incredible in what he did. It was an absolute pleasure to see him play. It was a pleasure to see that team play, and an even greater pleasure to see them from the inside and see the whole team and him, not just on the pitch in places like Budapest and Ibrox at Rangers and Lisbon and Amsterdam. It was a privilege to be around him, to get to know him afterwards and get to know him so well rounded the thing off perfectly, because I could love him as a footballer from a distance and what he did for my club. But then to get to like him, and even more so to get to love him later in life, justified everything. I can only thank him for what he did for me, for my team, and for every Geordie like me of a certain age, and for what he means to people like you who can pick up the history books, a much younger man but a passionate Newcastle United man, and read about Wyn Davies and say, hey, he must have been something. And your dad would tell you that he was something, and I'm telling you now as well, he certainly was. May he rest now. We have lost too many of that first cup side. We've lost Jackie Sinclair, we've lost John McNamee, and now Big Wyn. We've lost John Hope, Jemiley, Albert Bennett, who were around the fringes of that team. It's called the passing of time. All those that haven't been lost are old age pensioners like myself. But the memories we all have of a very, very special time. And you know what? Newcastle will have to go something to wipe them out of the memory. They'll never wipe them out of the record books because they were the first. But to wipe them out the memory, Newcastle have got to win a European trophy. That's it, Eddie. You go and win a European trophy. And you, by the way, to do it, whoever the man might be, you need a centre forward like Wyn Davies.
There we go, ladies and gents. A wonderful tribute by John Gibson there as we mark the passing of Wyn Davies, who sadly has died at the age of 83. Played for Newcastle United between 1966 1971, 53 goals and 216 appearances. And as we've said, was instrumental in Newcastle United lifting the first cup in 1969. Thank you very much for tuning in. Do pop your memories of Wyn Davies and tribute into the comments, and I'll get back to you. Do give us a thumbs up, hit like as well on the video. And for myself and John, we'll see you guys very soon.